Hello and welcome everyone to Deconstructing the Construct, episode 26. More emphasis, it seems, on it's an individual inside job and that it's all getting very, very physical and emotional. There has been, well, some interesting, to say the least, personal experiences that collectively have a few themes have emerged from. So there's been a lot of emotional release, people being very emotional for no apparent reason, curling up in fetal position basically and crying their eyes out and not knowing why. Or that feeling like you're just on the verge of tears all the time. One of the answers for that is the release of the frequency of unworthiness. I've personally felt for quite some time that the core of what you could say the problem of the human condition is a lack of self-worth. And if it is at the core, or very close to the core, then we really are, and it feels like we are, back to the beginning. And along with self-worth, or on the spectrum of self-worth, is victimhood. And these frequencies over the last 48 hours have left. And so they are no longer supported. So that means you release them, they come up and out, often wave at you on the way out, all of that. So what I've found, both personally and in those around me, is any situations, relationships, storylines where you're carrying any sense or feeling of unworthiness is going to come up to be released. What was the other one? I was just thinking of it and it went straight in and straight out. Damn. The other aspect, we talked a bit several weeks ago about empathy in the emotional body. And as time has gone on from that, and looking at the experiences of myself and others, and some of the work that we've done, I'm more and more sure that the emotional body was or is another overlay, just like or an implant, or whatever way people want to look at it. That just as we suspect the chakras are sort of inserted or implanted, possibly the pineal gland, that the emotional body was a replacement from our original heart body. This emotional body is attached to certain chakras, designed to be able to stimulate, manipulate, and control certain emotions. But it was essentially a replacement because we got disconnected from our true heart body. And the heart body is coming back online. I think this is a direct result of what happened a couple of weeks ago with the elements and the elements in our bodies. We are literally, excuse me, sorry, the dogs. We are literally getting our original hearts back. That can be quite physical as well as emotional. On the physical side, the other theme is issues with eyesight. Because if this is all a projection, if these are projectors and this is what we see our own projections, then our projections are changing. It feels like our eyes are adjusting to something else. And sometimes it feels like you're as blind as a bat. The other commonality is a lot of physical symptoms seem to be right-sided for whatever reason. There is a lot of, all around the world it seems, a lot of out of season or unusually strong storms happening, electrical storms, lots of thunderstorms, electrical storms. I think that the electricity in the environment, it's being charged. Ever since the elementals came back together, it's like they're charging the environment, charging the air, and we are being affected by this. I used this term last night. I said I feel like Frankenstein. You know, they're trying to start us up with the shot of electricity. But that seems to be connected. This has been a very emotional week for a lot of people, a very uncomfortable week. However, the sense is more and more and more that we are consistently and constantly moving forward. That it's not about fuckery, it's not about manipulation, it's not about attacks, it's not about any of that. It's about us becoming whole again. And it's showing up in all kinds of ways. And it looks like, based on the comments in the chat, that there's a lot of you experiencing some of the things I've mentioned, if not all. No, Tom, we only just, started 10 minutes ago. Okay. So if you would like to put your hand up, please do. If you have anything to comment or add. You've noticed the right side thing too, yeah. Karen's a left-sided. Yep, haven't done the members yet. I haven't done the calendar for November yet. I'm on that today. Thank you. What was that one thing I just thought of? I hadn't written down, obviously. Went in and out. That's it. The other thing that's going on is life reviews. Whether it happens in dream state, a lot of it is happening in dream state, where you're having these dreams about people and circumstances and situations in this life that you're reassessing what you did, your choices you made, your actions. It's like almost like a past life review or a life review. For some, that happens in one night. For others, it's been going on for days or even weeks. But it feels like ultimately the purpose of that is forgiveness, to forgive yourself for whatever you think you may have done. That's the other common theme at the moment. And not everybody's experiencing all of these things. For some, it's just the physical. For some, it's just the emotional. For some, it's just the past life or the life review. And for some lucky ones, it's all of it. And the frequency of unworthiness is a big one. Because for as long as I've been able to feel into the collective, like I said, that has felt like the very beginning, the core of our human condition. And I've never been able to see or feel anything behind that or under that. So once we've cleared that, who knows what's on the other side of it. But in conjunction with our original hearts coming back online, it feels like what's on the other side of that is the unconditional love that we remember, kind of that little hint that we've got that there is so much more. So that's my update. That took all of 14 minutes. So, your turn. John, did you have your hand up? No? I've got people pushing buttons on, cameras coming on and microphones coming on, but there used to be a lot going on, and but now it's becoming, like I said, such an individual inside job. And it does seem to just be about our bodies and our hearts and our minds. That's where all the focus and all the energy is. Whether we're lining up to walk through the eye of the needle or whatever it is that's going on, we have to step into it, it feels to me very much. Even though we're doing it collectively, we're doing it on our own. What can you do to help yourselves with our bodies? The physical stuff, sometimes you just have to relax and breathe through it. We've got plenty of people going to the hospital and no one can find anything. They get sent home the next day. That happened last night, but it's also been going on from the messages I've received all week, various people. Or the sort of symptoms that would normally get you to the hospital, but they know to just relax and breathe through it. Just do all the things that you know. Listen to your body. Drink plenty of water. Try and get as much sleep as possible. Most people are sleeping more than they're awake these days, if they can be in that position to do so, because either their bodies just need it or their minds need it. And so be kind to yourself. Detox. If you're in a position to do it somewhat gently on yourself, because there's so much going on in our bodies that going too hard just might be too hard. But a gentle detox, gentle fast, lots of water, and lots of sleep. It can be done gently. Yeah. Sleeping 12 to 16 hours a day on weekends, yeah. I'm hearing that a lot. What about smoking? Smoking what? Okay, Teresa, you are unmuted.
Can you hear me okay, Lisa?
I can, darling, yes.
Hey, sorry it's been a minute. More so not a question, but just opening of dialogue. I love the fact that you mentioned the core of the worthiness issue seeming to be so deep, because even in my late 20s, I wrote this thing called The True Original Sin. I mean, you know, a lot of us were, even if we weren't raised in a church, we knew the story of Genesis. I mean, who the hell don't get the story of Genesis, you know? And way back then, I had migraines because I was trying to figure this thing out. Like, what the heck happened, you know? Why are there so many alcoholics and you know, all this stuff. And, I mean, I was only 17 when I was married the first time, and my husband was 17 years older than me. And of course, you know, he was an alcoholic, big whoop-de-doo, but, you know, which I'm sure a lot of people have experienced. But back then, I kept thinking about the story itself and, like, you know, how it was taught or how it was written or whatever. And there's always, you know, something in everything, or it wouldn't exist. And I got to thinking to myself, and this is just a hypothesis that I thought maybe because it's an important issue here, worthiness, because in my experience, I mean, narcissism, everything, all the dysfunction comes from this deep-seated sense of unworthiness, from the lightest of the lightest psychological issue to the deepest, you know, and the human family and whatever. And I'm just wondering if, you know, I thought about it back then, the fact that, you know, supposedly, you know, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and, you know, then they got scorned by, you know, the wrathful God, as we know, but whatever. And I got thinking about it back then, and I'm wondering what anybody else thinks about this, that the whole point of the story is to realize, to not run away in fear. And that the story in and of itself, if you really, really look at it, as soon as they were aware, they ran and they were afraid and they put clothes on and they covered themselves and all of this stuff. And I don't know, it just really meant a lot to me back then. And I'm still, you know, I still have parts of me that have senses of unworthiness, but, you know, maybe my body's not good enough, maybe I'm not sexy enough, blah, blah, blah. You know, we all have these mind things. So I thought maybe we could, you know, talk about that a little bit more and see what everybody's thoughts are and everything on that, because I think this is a really important portion of our work here. And anyway, you look beautiful and happy to be here. And just, you know, again, I just wanted to mention something about that because I think it's huge. And so maybe we should chat more about it. That's all.
Well,
thoughts?
I think, you know, I mean, religion has played such a huge part in our overall sense of unworthiness. And a friend was sharing that she grew up Catholic, and one of the things that they were made to do as children as well was to tap the thymus while saying, I am not worthy. I am not worthy of your, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, I'm not worthy to have you under my skin. I'm not worthy to have your, you know, I mean, while you're tapping your thymus. So scratch that. And that the thymus is the seat of the immune system. It's, you know, it's the seat of everything. So that's some serious fucked up programming. And I didn't know that. I didn't know they did that until the other day. But it's always felt like at the core, like you say, of drug addiction, of alcoholism, of dysfunctional relationships, of so many personal and social problems, is this sense of unworthiness. And whether, as you say, you mentioned narcissism and psychopathy, whether they're an extreme response to a sense of unworthiness, or whether they're completely unaffected by it, who knows? Your thymus, Jay. Yeah, either had I, Leslie. I hadn't heard of it before either. There you go, Teresa. Oh, hang on. Nope.
While you were saying that, I just got like, which is kind of probably a ridiculous ping, but you know, if we're a collective and what we do together, we put out into the collective, and of course, we all know our energy affects everybody. And I know this sounds pretty simple, but hey, you know, let's work on the unworthiness thing together, because the more we do it, the more it goes on the collective, and the more we lift that up out of the whole, you know, vibrational energy of things, right? I mean, I know there's got to be a way that we can, as we do what we do, affect, you know, the energy of that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. However, the way I understand it is the frequency itself has left the collective, it's left the environment, and now it's up to us individually to clear and release it, because it's no longer being supported in the collective. You can
Okay.
whether you feel, you know, that we're dealing with an organic conscious being as the planet, Gaia, all of that, or whether you see it as, you know, a construct, a virtual reality construct, and it's just a program, it doesn't really matter. Either way, the frequency has been deleted or let go and no longer supported. So whether we like it or not, I think the issue is going to come up. If you're carrying that frequency, it's going to show itself and be released. And it could be, for those of you who are crying for no reason or no apparent reason, it could be that's what you're doing, is releasing that, and you just can't name it or identify it exactly as that.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Sorry, it's taking a few goes to unmute people. I'm trying to unmute you, JJ.
There we go. Self-worthiness. Boy, that's a biggie.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been so programmed from a variety of sources, not the least of which our parents and our siblings and our peers and all that stuff. And it's just sort of, it's everywhere. And in my processing of all of this fuck-uppedness, I guess you could say, I've run across a couple of key factors that really helped me. And one of them was the Roman or the Latin term temet nose, which means know thyself. As you become more familiar with what and who you truly are, as opposed to the facades and the barriers and all of that stuff that we wear to try to, you know, present ourselves to society, it became much clearer to me that there's less and less and less to be ashamed of, or to be to hold up as, oh, you know, bad person, you know, slap your hand, slap your face, whatever kind of stuff. And it took a while. It wasn't one of those like snap your fingers. Of course, this was back a few years, but one of the absolute key aspects was forgiveness, and specifically forgiving myself. Because I mean, we all are our own worst enemies. We all can look at the shit we did and go, what the fuck? I mean, but we learned, or at least I learned, and hopefully we learned from those mistakes, which is kind of to the second point, which is they're there. The situations were presented. We were able to go through that fuck uppedness, make the mistakes, learn the lessons, know that we don't have to do that again, and move out to the next lesson or next series or whatever. But in and amongst that is the idea that we're kind of living in a sandbox. It's kind of like a kindergarten class. We're here to make mistakes. We're here to find out what works. We're here to do all that weird shit, learn from it, move on, but most importantly, learn to forgive ourselves despite all of that. And that is really powerful, because if you can see that you made choices you thought were the best at the time and later turned out to be disasters or, you know, whatever, and you learn from it, then it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it, because you don't have to do that again. You can leave that whole chain of action and reaction and thinking and all of that stuff behind, because you know that that's not what and who you are. I mean, it was what and who you are at the time. That's why you made the choice. But now you've moved on. You've moved past it, hopefully. And that centers around, or is key to, that forgiveness thing. And there's a there's an additional aspect to that, is that when you can truly forgive yourself for anything, it doesn't matter what it is, anything, you can reflect that on those who do that kind of stuff to you and see that eventually they'll learn to forgive themselves for all the stuff that they've done to you and everybody else. And it snowballs. It just picks up momentum and just gathers speed, because you're breaking that. Well, it's kind of like Ho'oponopono. You break that emotional infusion of, why did they do that to me? It just goes away. So you don't feed into all of those cycles, all of that emotional crap that continues and maintains it, and it just starts to fade. And yeah, it can be emotional. Yeah, I mean, we all know what we did. We all know all that crap. But at the same time, if you can look back on it, recognize it, own it, and forgive yourself, to me, it's the path through. It's the way through all of this crap without carrying a bunch of baggage, because you drop it at the door. You just leave it behind. And that to me is the most empowering single thing, or not single thing, but I mean series of things that worked. Because other than that, the amount of crap that we all do for ourselves, and we all know we're own worst enemies. If we hang on to that, it just into the ground. We're just rolling in the dirt. So, just
agreed.
some thought.
I think most people do the best they can and make the right choices in the moment based on what they know and understand at the time. The ones who don't are the ones that we tend to call narcissists. And we don't know what we don't know. And I think we all do what we think is right in any given moment. And the self-judgment, the self-recrimination, the self-doubt is all manifestations of this sense of unworthiness. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, and the way things are happening, we won't have known in a week. Who knows? Because things seem to be happening very, very fast. It'll be interesting to see where we're sitting, this time next week within ourselves. What would the world look like if everybody in it didn't have this as a core issue, this lack of self-worth? Because, if we can only love another if we love ourselves, they say. We can only respect another if we truly respect ourselves. We can only find value and worth in another if we find it in ourselves. So how does that change the world if we can truly feel worthy of being good to ourselves, of being good to each other, of the kind of unconditional love that we've all been longing for as a collective? That looks like a very, very different place. And it feels like where we're heading. Because I don't see anything on the other side of this other than that, personally. Once that frequency is gone, once it's cleared, there's nothing but unconditional love on the other side of that. My world would be completely different. Yeah. So thank you, JJ. Trying to unmute you, Teresa, again, but there we go.
I think I got it. Something just occurred to me. I was reading the chat, and after I listened to JJ, and I hope these words come out right, but you know, about the forgiving of self and all these types of things. And then you mentioned, you know, we don't know really what goes on inside with a narcissistic person or psychopath or whatever. And I kind of think that there's this little crazy fine line, because the reason I'm going to say this is because I've been on the opposite side of, let's just say, a narcissist saying to me, oh, your hurt is only your own. I mean, that's, of course, we understand that, what we choose to feel and what we, whatever, what's the right words? I know I was going to get lost in my words. The only way I could do is give an example. Okay, here's an example. I saw a life coach somewhere, I don't know, just came across my board on YouTube, talking about how, of course, what other people feel is their own responsibility. But that, to me, does not justify a human being to hurt other people. I know this sounds crazy and stupid, but there is a fine line there. And a lot of people, I'm noticing, are of the mindset that, you know, I forgive myself, I love myself, but then they're in the ego, the unhealthy body that we were talking about, as you were discussing before, Lisa, that has to leave. The part that is narcissistic, that doesn't really give a shit about anybody, because the truth is they haven't really forgiven themselves. They haven't truly understood their self-worth. They still are working in a oh God, I know the words aren't coming right. Maybe somebody could help me. Lisa, do you kind of know where I'm going with this? There's that little fine line. I have seen too many people say things. Oh man, I wish I could.
I know what you're talking about. I mean, I've certainly seen it and witnessed it and experienced it myself. That attitude of basically, I can do whatever I want and I can treat you as badly as I want. And if you don't like it, if you feel bad about it, if you feel used or abused or neglected or whatever, then that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and okay. Yeah. And so you walk away. That's why so many people here have soul families, soul tribes. We're all here. We're family, whatever, you know. I just wanted to mention it because self-forgiveness and the feeling of self-worth and all that does not, the truth of it, the true divinity in it will not harm another. And if you start to notice everyone saying things to you like, you're hurting my feelings, you're doing this, you know, then obviously there's something more you need to look at. That's all. And I'm not saying there's anybody out here that have that happen or whatever, but it doesn't mean that just because you're awake and aware that you don't have that ability, or that screwed upness in your head that you think, because it's not in your head, it's in your heart. I mean, we've talked about this before, but even in the awake and aware community, I have seen so much mean-spiritedness going on. And if you truly were there's got to be a word or a way to describe this, because you can see the difference. Am I wrong? I mean, you can see the difference in a person who truly does love themselves in a healthy way, not in a narcissistic way. They will not do harm. They won't wield harm. There's not going to be, oh, that person just, you know, can anybody help me out on this? You follow me, Lisa?
You're doing fine. And yeah.
It's an important moment in this.
And agreed, because there is that whole idea of hurting another is just as painful to you as it is to them. And when you're truly, and you wouldn't dream of it. There's a lot of ego, even in sometimes especially in the awake and aware and new age communities. And there's still a lot of hierarchy and judgment. But so you do see a lot of that false love and light even. So yeah, no, I agree with you. And you did just fine.
Thank you. It's important though. I just had to say it because I've, I don't know if anybody sees my personal wall. I don't tend to post a lot on other walls, but that's something I've been talking about a lot lately, and I'm gonna quit because I don't want to stay in that energy. But a few times, because I've seen it, and it's like, oh my God, how can you talk about, unity and diversity and love and all of this when you can do such mean-spirited things? Again, I just, whatever. You walk away from it, yeah, but there's sometimes you can't because it's right there in your face. That's all. Much love.
And this is where I think the difference between this emotional body and the true heart body comes in. And I know that when I talked about empathy, it confused some people, but because they thought it was a disconnection from compassion, which it's not at all. The emotional body does feel to me like it's literally dissolving. It's going away. And what we're finding underneath that is our true heart, our core heart. And it's not just this little spot in here that you can tune into. It's bigger than that. It's like it is a body. It's our true heart body. And it doesn't have any of that judgment. It doesn't have any of those issues. What it has is a connection to yourself and others that is deeper than anything the emotional body is capable of, is my experience. And you couldn't dream of operating with those programs from that space. They just don't exist there. That's how it feels to me. I had an epiphany today. I was listening to a video and the person talked about us being light. Then I saw in my head how things, demons and beings, have been bound by the copper wristbands and wrapping things, etc. Got me thinking that this is what happened to us. We were bound with this meat suit. But the question still remains, beside death, how do we get unbound? Well, there's certainly a lot of speculation as to why our bodies are doing what they're doing. What's the end result here? And I've heard people's sort of intuitive feeling about what's going on with themselves is anything from it feels like a new body is being built or forming on the inside, and that this is becoming more and more of a crust or a shell and like they're going to pop out. Is it that the body needs to heal to a point where the consciousness can disconnect from it safely, cleanly, in order to move into a different one? It's another idea. Or are they just in the process of transforming and changing and whatever? So no definitive answers on that, but it is very physical what's going on right now. There's also a lot, from what I understand, a lot of people not coping. From what I heard, the suicide rate for 2017 is way up. Now, I don't know. I mean, that's a mainstream news sort of reports, but who knows? If that's the case and people just aren't coping, that's unfortunate to say the least. I mean, as confusing and as often crazy as the narrative that we're playing with and working with sounds, it helps. it helps to have a context to put these things in that feel true and give us some semblance of calm, I guess, about what's going on with this. And it doesn't feel like we're putting our head in the sand or we're kidding ourselves, because we go through these physical symptoms. People do go to doctors and hospitals, and there's nothing wrong with them. So what is the answer? And we're moving through these processes so quickly that no 2 days are the same. And the issue you dealt with yesterday is dealt with and it's gone. And now you're on to the next thing. Wasn't that long ago that life just wasn't like that. So I do feel for people who don't have a context to put what's going on in, and can certainly imagine it would be very, very scary. So I wouldn't be surprised if these statistics are true. Every day is Tuesday. Exactly. A dream from Laurie. I saw a dead tree with avocado-sized nutshells on them dried up. A girl went over and picked them and said, I don't think it's really dead. It cracked open and there was a live chick inside. Look, this show is called Deconstructing the Construct for a reason, because I do think the whole thing is deconstructing. All the evidence for me points to that. And I know some places are still getting a lot of chemtrails. It does seem to follow the sun. There is obviously something around that they don't want us to see. But these storms and these electrical storms and the lightning and everything that's going on around all over the place. And if you haven't got that, you seem to have high winds, which also has an electrical element to it. I think this is part of the process. I don't think it's geoengineering. I think it's the elements that finally come together, and they are working together, and they are cleaning shit out. They are literally cleaning up the environment and putting an electric charge in the air that is for our benefit. So that's all from me. So if you have a comment or an addition, okay, JJ. Yes, darling?
I've been noticing strange internet, or not, well, just computer issues.
Yes.
Things would stop working all of a sudden. Like right now, my internet's working fine, but my Wi-Fi has gone patootie. Just strange, odd little hiccups. Nothing disastrous, nothing major, just like, why is it doing that all of a sudden kind of stuff. And in a continuing series, not just a one-off shot. Like, well, it just did that. No, this has been going on for several days now, and I've been sort of monitoring and watching it, and just sort of seeing if there's a hidden message in the middle of somewhere in there or something. But I've been noticing that well, between me and others that I help with their computer stuff or whatever, that small little hiccups pop up. Just something to keep your eye on. It's nothing major. It always gets resolved and fixed, but, keeps you on your toes, I guess.
No, I've noticed it here too. Same sort of thing. All the indications say the internet is fine coming into the house, but the Wi-Fi itself, not so much. And it's been since the elements got back together and the ether got cleaned up. And what it wasn't going to deal with anymore or allow anymore was to be manipulated. And I'm wondering how many of their weapons are no longer functioning.
Yeah. And the other thing is that if the, quote, ether net is coming back online, that could be screwing with all sorts and manners and types of radio-based, in other words, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff, interfaces as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it all does manifest, because if the ether is truly, how to put it, reformulating itself, I suppose is a way of putting it, so that basically it can be all that it can be and not be screwed with and fucked with by the powers that be or whomever. I would suspect to see very interesting responses, like Wi-Fi going sideways or whatever, but cell phones, all manner of broadcast TV, radio, all that stuff. I would expect to see a lot of engineers pulling their hair out about this point, going, "What the hell's going on?" But we'll see it, in our own home stuff with our cell phones and our Wi-Fi connections and computer, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But I have been seeing a noted uptick in anomalous behavior.
Yep. Agreed. Susie, you're unmuted.
Speaking about that today, I was using Google GPS to go someplace, and the freeways were totally jammed. And so there was a thing where you can click on route, and then you can say like no toll roads, no ferries, or no freeways. Well, today there was only one option. All the other options had disappeared. It was, do I want to have a route with a ferry or without? The option of, a route without a freeway or not there. The route with a toll road, without a toll road, not there. And that was like in the last 45 minutes. Because I'm in my car, I just pulled over. The other thing is, I was going to a store. I passed out chocolate demos of organic chocolate at health food stores, and I got done, and I felt this overwhelming urge to drive a little bit out of my way to the cemetery where my grandparents, my brother, and my niece and nephew are buried. And I haven't been there for quite a while, and I know they're still somewhere, not with me or with anything. As soon as I pulled up, major cloud burst. I mean, I just fell on top of my grandparents' grave, like my grandmother Betty and Grandpa Harold. They raised me until I was 8. They loved me more than my parents have ever loved me. They love me now. And my grandmother, I felt her. She just put her hand on my shoulder and she says, "We're helping you. We'll see you soon." And I don't think that she's helping me like I'm going to die. I feel like she sees me, she hears me. I haven't been to that cemetery in almost 2 decades. Her birthday is 2 days after mine. We were always very, very close. We're both Aquarius. That bronzestone was covered with my tears. I've never had that experience.
So a big release for you too.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful experience, Susie.
She wasn't old like when she left. She looked like she was in her 20s.
People are having more of those experiences too. Seeing with some loved ones, like you just had, but seeing and hearing people that aren't, like either seeing people that shouldn't be there or hearing people that aren't there. We've had it here a couple of times. It looks like that urge to go to the cemetery was your catalyst for whatever release you needed to release.
I think you're right. I mean, I mean, this morning I woke up and found out that someone had hacked into my checking account and took out $86.96. And I called, my credit union, and I said, I need to file a police report. I need to know where this debit emanated from. And they're like, we have no information on it. I'm like, what? And I said, well, how can I prevent it from happening again? I mean, who are you going to block? And they're like, we don't know where the debit came from.
How can they not know?
That's what I want to know. How can they not know? And the number 8696.
Oh, there's a message in that, isn't there?
I mean, they said I can fill out a form and they can, put the money back in my account. And I was like, I've never had a phone conversation with a bank like this. Like they'll say, do you know such and such, or do you have an account somewhere? Like if it was PayPal, or like if it was, something like that, it would have a name on it.
Yep. P just asked a good question. Were those years significant? 86, 96?
The years 86. Yes. 86 was significant. That's when I got separated from my husband with the intention of getting divorced. And 96, nothing comes right to mind.
Give it some thought. And it feels very strongly like there's a message in there for you. An expensive way to get one, but...
96 was the year I was diagnosed with cervical cancer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a memory I'd like to block.
Well, I'd say there's something around both of those issues that you need to release, not block.
Was when I had gotten the remission from cervical cancer that I was so afraid that it would come back, that I agreed to marry someone who had a good resume and my parents liked, but I wasn't in love with, in case I were to die, because my mother's mother died of cervical cancer. And that was a major disaster. I married him. I got engaged to him in 96 or 97, and then in 98 we got married, and after 30 days I had the marriage annulled.
And that happened this morning, did you say? The same day?
Yeah, it happened.
Grandparents?
Yeah, it happened this morning. And my grandfather's birthday is tomorrow. He was born on Halloween and he died on April Fool's.
Sounds like he had a sense of humor.
That's the worst, when you're calling relatives to say Harold passed away and they're like, is this some kind of sick April Fool's joke? And it's like, no, it's the day he picked,
I like your grandfather's sense of humor then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think that she meant by "we're helping you"?
She was probably somewhere behind the 86, 96, getting you to have a look at that, help you release, help you heal. She did what she could to get your attention.
Yeah.
And if you get it, if you can go through it, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back up.
I never would have associated that dollar amount with yours. You know,
well, you can thank P for that.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
No, P.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I can see that there's two. I mean, there are obviously two big issues there. And you said it yourself, something you want to block. So,
yeah.
No more.
Not happy times.
Yeah. Rand said, tell him next time to make it a deposit.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Susie. It's really powerful.
You're welcome. I just, with all my heart and soul, every moment I think this is the last 24 hours here. This is the last 24 hours here. This is the last 24 hours here.
And you're not alone. People are either thinking it or hoping it. One of the two. And the experiences that some people are having when they're asleep of being where we call home, there's more and more people experiencing that, and for longer and longer periods. And they're sleeping more and spending more time there than they are here. So this does feel like there's a finality to what we're going through, it feels. If I see you next Wednesday, I'll see you next Wednesday. Okay, anybody else before we sign off? JJ, you're unmuted.
I had a very interesting circumstance or situation happen last night. I was sitting in my chair, my eyes closed. I think it was meditating. I can't remember what it was. No, I was just listening to music. And it felt like I dropped about 2 or 3 inches. Like my chair, someone hit the button and the chair just went thump. It wasn't like really hard. It was kind of soft, but I didn't move. My knees were still jammed up under the center section of the desk. I hadn't moved, but it felt exactly like I dropped vertically, just straight down about 3 inches, just thump. And I went, that's new. That's pretty cool. What's more? What's next? That's a good, don't stop now. And I never would have, I've never experienced anything like that before. And I never would have guessed that would be an experience that would happen. I mean, I can imagine all kinds of stuff, that you could feel physically, whatever, but just a straight or like a 3 or 4 inch vertical drop, that wasn't on the list. I'm not sure what that was, but it was well enough to get my attention. That's for sure. But it was pretty cool, actually. I mean, just one of those kind of experiences that you go, well, that's when I can put a little check mark. Unexpected vertical drop from 3 inches. I never know it was on the list, but I thought it was pretty cool nonetheless. Just one of the little experience things out there.
Yeah, well, you're not alone. I've had that one. So several in the chat room, it seems. And it's not like your stomach comes up kind of drop. It's far gentler than that. Although I have had that too. When they come to think of it. But yeah, and even a slow but intense pulling sensation, and it's down. Like you're sinking into yourself. No idea what it means, but it does seem to be part of the process. And
it was novel, if nothing else.
These and many more things. Thanks, JJ. Okay, guys. I think we're done. And apparently some of you have changed to daylight savings again. So we've been at this call for an hour. It still starts at 8 a.m. Brisbane, Queensland time in Australia. Conversion, I'll do up the calendar for November. But it'll be on the website. So my time, it's not changing. So yeah, 8 a.m. my time. Queensland doesn't do daylight savings. So. Okay, see you next week, maybe. And yeah, just be good to yourselves, be gentle, because this is intense. And if you can sleep, sleep. Drink plenty of water, and just let the tears flow. If you want to curl up in fetal position and cry your eyes out for a couple of days, then do that. Just, it's part of the process, and it has to happen. And eat lots of chocolate. Okay, bye for now.